so hopefully they stick it here. So some context. I work for a company called ExtraHop. We're a cybersecurity company that focuses on what we call network detection and response. So it's basically using machine learning to look for detect any sort of suspicious and anomalous behaviors going on in the enterprise network. Now, the context is important because today we're going to be talking about some of the collective know-how and experiences that we've seen in the 15 years at ExtraHop, working with local Indonesian banks, regional tier 1 Singapore, Philippines, Thailand banking customers, as well as global, a lot of these big multinational banking customers. And so today's focus is on cybersecurity. So for those in cybersecurity, great. Hopefully you can listen in. And for those who aren't, I hope they have enough analogies to help you appreciate and understand some of the concepts that we're going to go through today. So with that, my topic today is about defining an XDR strategy. XDR stands for Extended Detection and Response. So in cybersecurity, this is getting a lot of hype about improving the detection and response capabilities within a cybersecurity organization. And so there's a lot of buzz around that, and today's conversation is to really understand how to define a good strategy for your cybersecurity organization. So let's begin. So before we can define a strategy, let's first define what the definition of XDR is, or Extended Detection and Response. And if you ask 5 people, you get 5 different answers. And the reason why is we have different people saying different things and giving out different definitions that suit their needs the best. So let's start out by defining what the analysts, the supposed industry experts, talk about. And a lot of text here, but there's people that kind of define it as taking different sources of information, your email, your network, your endpoint, your log information. Correlate that all up, and you can improve your detection and your response capabilities. So that's the definition we see on the top left-hand corner. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, we see it kind of defined as 3 specific points that I already mentioned. It's also the collection of data. But one thing that's worth noting is exactly about all of this data. You're collecting it, and you also have to normalize the data and be able to have, again, better detection and better response capabilities. And you see on the bottom right, there's basically people taking existing technologies like endpoint detection and response. Think of them as the more advanced antivirus these days, and the ability to enhance its ability to detect malware. But the definition that we're going to use today, and I think ones that most cybersecurity analysts will agree, is the one on the top right-hand corner. It's by John Altzik. And the important thing that I'd like to know about here is it talks about XDR not being a product or technology. It's more than a technology. It's an initiative. It's a framework. It's a North Star. It's the ability to really look into the types of data and really provide an initiative. So when you have a framework, it really defines the processes, the products you purchase. For those in cybersecurity, I'm sure you've heard the term zero trust. And that's the term that you don't just buy zero trust. You have to have a zero trust framework, and you have to have processes and technologies in place to help achieve this ultimate goal of zero trust. It's a constant process that is always going on. It's not something you buy and check the box. So that's how the analysts define what XDR is. Let's look at the vendor world. And then this is where things get interesting. Bear with me, if you're not in the cybersecurity space, there's a lot of jargons and a lot of acronyms. XDR, like I mentioned, is extended detection and response. It's the ability to extend and enhance your detect and respond capabilities when it comes to cybersecurity. And so what you see is different vendors in the cybersecurity space try to wrap up this terminology as an umbrella term. So you might have EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, a solution that you install on a PC or a server. And that's the ability to provide more visibility. And so some people just wrap it up as improved EDR. Then you have vendors who can collect log files. We call them SIEM, or SIEM, Security Information Management. And so this has been around. I'm sure most of your organizations today are collecting log files and correlating them into what we call SIEM. So we do have a lot of SIEM vendors, historically in this space, acquire an endpoint technology, and suddenly they're XDR. And we have the vice versa. Or we have some more skeptical claims where basically taking an existing old technology of SIEM and just say, hey, we're collecting log files from everywhere. This is basically XDR. We're collecting from data sources. We're providing better detection and response capabilities. That's a more skeptical claim. We're just saying it's rebranded. And when you ask the users that are using a security operations center, they might be a little more skeptical. This is just senseless marketing technology. This is just rebranding of your existing security technology. There might be some truth to that as well. As security vendors in cybersecurity, the marketing team always tries to find different innovative ways to rebrand and repackage the product. So we can see that the vendor analysts have certain packaging. We have the industry analysts that are putting specific definitions behind it. But at the end of the day, the point of extended detection response in cybersecurity is to A, improve detection and response. That's pretty obvious. Second is to really reduce the friction. And you have different sources of data coming from log files, from the network, from identity, from endpoint, from email, from the cloud. There's going to be a lot of friction involved in this data, and how we can reduce that friction. Thirdly is, since we have all these different data, we can consolidate them from a business perspective. So that's also really important. That's kind of the end goal. That's the global mission of XDR. So what do we do and how do we improve network detection capabilities? So let's drill down into that. And so this is the first kind of strategy that I would submit to you in terms of looking at defining an extended detection and response or XDR strategy. Is first change the mindset. A lot of cybersecurity within management are in a world that we cannot be compromised. We can't have any intrusion, but we no longer live in that world. It's inevitable. It's not about if you will be breached, but when. But when you do breach, do you as a cybersecurity organization have the resiliency and the processes and the technologies in place to have rapid detection and response capabilities? So this is very important. The old mindset was let's set up your firewalls, your intrusion prevention detection systems, your antivirus solutions, and then you protect and prevent. Those are still useful and still needed, but that can't be the only be-all, end-all. There has to be resiliency. Even the most sophisticated organizations, be it government, financials, will eventually have a bottleneck. Right? You can't control the user who plugs in the wrong USB drive, opens up the wrong email attachment, and that's always going to be a bottleneck. And so understanding that mindset change from a protect and prevent to a detect and response is very critical. And once you have that mindset change, you will notice that the processes you have, the technologies that you invest in, will change drastically based on that. So based on that, we also talk about filling in the gaps. And that's really important when we talk about improving your detection. You can only improve if you can measure. If you can't even understand where your gaps are, that's a challenge. So we'll talk a little bit later about filling in the gaps. At the end of the day, you will inevitably have a compromise, and you want to reduce the time it takes for the bad actor to roam around in your environment. And that's what we call reducing the dwell time. It's not about if, it's about when, but when it does occur, how fast. Are we talking days, hours, minutes? And unfortunately, in Asia, the industry average is around 100+ days until we notice that the environment has already had compromise. So focusing on that as the end goal. So before we do that, let's make an analogy in terms of understanding where the data is being collected for cybersecurity. And this is an analogy we like to use where this is a community of houses. There's different houses, and there's people going in and out of these houses. You can think of these houses as your servers, your clients, your IoT devices, anyone that is bringing their own device in. It can be your cloud data center, it can be your on-premise data center. The point here is all of these different houses are your critical infrastructure, your internet banking, your mobile banking, your CRM, your partner networks that you have external connections with. And so the network is a great place to get visibility like a GPS high-resolution view. Why? Because it shows all the houses, all your servers and clients and assets, as well as everyone who's interacting with each other, who's going to each other's house, number of requests, number of responses, and looking for any sort of anomalous or suspicious behavior that's going on. It's great on a network, but there are some blind spots, and the blind spots are related to not being able to see within the house what's going on inside the house today. And that's where historically cybersecurity has focused a tremendous amount of time on, is putting an endpoint detection or response, kind of the, again, progression of your antivirus solutions on the host itself, on your local PC. Sometimes you install it on the server. Sometimes you might have limitations as well, because you do know you can't install an agent on every single device. Your IoT devices, IP cameras, your IP phones, your printers, these are potential attack surface that will lead to potential risks. So that's the blind spots, but we at least get visibility inside the house itself. And the last one is logging data, where you get lots of different sources, normally generated by applications exposed by developers. So that provides very detailed transactional view, but it's more specific to inside the house. So you can think of it in a loop. Your proxy logs, your web server logs, your mobile banking logs. They give you very discrete, very detailed information, but of a specific functionality. And some people might be collecting network logs from their proxy or their firewall logs or your authentication. And that will give you a view of kind of like the security gate in the front of a community. You can see who's going in and out of the house, in and out of the data center, but you won't see who's going east-west or within the houses themselves. That's where the network can come in. So that hopefully gives you an idea of the different types of data sources. And this helps us understand when we look at post-compromise, where our data is being collected, and how does that relate to our detection and response capabilities? Because when we start talking about post-compromise, it's no longer good enough to do your firewalls and your prevention systems, because once the bad guys are in your environment, we have to talk post-compromise and look at it, the interactions within the community itself. So the best way, and the most objective way that we recommend to look at detection efficacy is to align to specific frameworks. And the one I suggest here is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's a pretty kind of de facto standard now when we're talking about detection capabilities, where they outline objectively what are the techniques, and procedures that bad actors are using. So it's no longer you hearing a vendor pitch. They use buzzwords like machine learning, AI, metaverse, blockchain, and you go, wow, that's great. It looks like sexy technology. But really, we have tier one banking customers, we have one that basically says, those are all great buzzwords, but at the end of the day, when I invest in a cybersecurity detection solution, how does that line up with my MITRE ATT&CK framework? When I buy this technology, what gaps does it fill in my tactics, techniques, and procedures? And you can see there's a horizontal line of different boxes, and these are what we call cyber kill chain. This is understanding when a bad actor comes in my environment, there's a logical progression along the attack. Just because a vendor's machine is compromised or a college intern's laptop is compromised does not mean your database or your C-level laptop's data is being sent out. There's logical progression to get there, and that's where the MITRE ATT&CK helps you really identify where you're strong at. When I buy an endpoint detection, these are the tactics, techniques, and procedures. When I buy a network monitoring solution, what does that cover in terms of my TTPs? And so you have a very objective conversation, and when you justify a purchase, you have a better understanding of how this fits into my overall security posture. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about chess. Who here plays chess? Raise your hand. Or used to play chess. Who here plays StarCraft or other real-time strategies? I'm probably dating myself by talking about some games. Or League of Legends, Dota. But if you play some of these games, what does this have to do with cybersecurity? All of these games have a very distinct three parts of the game. There's the opening, where you prepare for, and this sets your opening strategy. There's the mid-game, and this is the very critical stage where you determine the tactics. This is what keeps the international masters in chess from the grandmasters. In Indonesia, there's actually a high proportion of grandmasters relative to Asian countries. And so the mid-game is very important, because if you do the mid-game right, it determines what your end-game strategy is. What does this have to do with cybersecurity? So this is a great analogy for a cybersecurity breach as well. Initial access, when a hacker gets into your environment, it's like we established, it's not about if and when. When that occurs, there's the initial access to still everything. But when that occurs, there's different opportunities to detect and respond. And that's what we call the mid-game. That's why the mid-game is a very important stage. Because if you get the mid-game right and you detect and respond, and you have the resiliency as an organization, you determine what the end game is. Oftentimes, we all know ransomware is when your files are getting encrypted. That's the last stage. That's the end game. To get to that stage where the encrypted files, you can compromise a host that has access to those files. And so, if you have that mid-game right, and you look at the bottom as all the different tactics, techniques, and procedures involved in the mid-game, that's where your detection and response strategy should be. Because that's the opportunity to really detect and respond and have the resiliency. So what's out there in the market today in terms of extended detection and response? On the left-hand side, you see this some vendors are approaching a more open XDR alliance, where you have a single vendor claiming to be an alliance. And then we have different vendors that have very specialized views of their space. ExtraHop being in the network space, we don't claim to do anything else. We're very specialized in network detection and response. There'll be other vendors that are very focused on the cloud. That's all they do, and they're very good at it. Identity. And so that's one of the approaches we see in our offerings from vendors, and you have a more open XDR alliance. On the flip side, we see that there's vendor solutions that, through acquisitions, are a huge portfolio of solutions. They have email portfolio, they have network, they have endpoint, they have firewalls, they have logging, and they bundle them all together and package it up as XDR, or extended detection and response. So these are kind of the two general ways that we see XDR go to market in terms of vendor solutions. So how do we kind of fit into this? And we can kind of talk about the pros and cons. The open XDR strategy obviously has some benefits. You're getting the best of breed product, and you're focused in a very focused service. You're getting the best network visibility solution. You're getting the best email security solution. You're getting the best endpoint security solution. The best of breed to really help detect any sort of advanced threats that are coming into your organization. The second, as well, you're getting an unbiased view with multiple vendors. We call it defense in depth, as well as efficiencies in pricing, which might be a little bit counterintuitive. How can you negotiate with separate vendors and have efficiencies in pricing? Remember, detection and response is about collecting a lot of data, centralizing it, normalizing it, and so what's important? Data storage and data querying. And so oftentimes, a vendor who provides the best firewalls, the best endpoints, or the best network may not be the solution that does big data, like Google. Right? So it's really important to know you can get potential optimizations in pricings when you have the best big data repository that can search fast, that can query fast, and is economically cheap and scalable while having the detections within the next one. The cons, I think, are quite apparent. You're going to have to negotiate separate contracts, agreements, integrations has to be done. So that's obviously the downside of working with best-of-breed solutions. So some of the things to consider here is, are these service level or useful detections, integrations? Oftentimes, many vendors say we can integrate with X, but all that means is setting up a alert. What kind of real detailed integrations? For example, when a network detection like ExtraHop sees anomalous behaviors via machine learning, can it tell the endpoint to do a proactive blocking? That's a deeper integration that's not just about sending an alert, but doing an active blocking. On the flip side, we have single vendors. The pros is obviously single handshake, single contract. The cons are you might have inconsistent product quality. You might have some solutions that are very good in this space, but they acquired a solution down the way that's maybe not as good as their initial product that got them to be successful. And oftentimes with acquisition products, the R&D team, the engineering team leave, and you're left with a product without much innovation after the acquisition. So those are things to consider. And the questions are quite similar. Are these, even with single vendors, are these useful or service level integrations just because they're the same company? They've gone through acquisitions, they may or may not necessarily be a single product that's actually unified? And do they have integrations, or are they just service level? I'll wrap things up by talking about the side here today's take-home message. And first off is changing your mindset from a protect and prevent to more of a post-compromise mindset. And that's really important because that really talks about security and resiliency, and not just talking about we have to prevent every single breach. And that change in mindset will help improve your detection response. When you understand the data sources that are being used, is it log, is it endpoint, is it network, what are the pros and cons, and mapping it to an objective framework like MITRE. And lastly, we talked about the go-to-meal plan. What's your strategy? Do you want a more open XDR where you're getting the best of breeds and negotiating on your own terms? Or are you getting a single vendor that can do everything off the chart? And we have to be very careful of the portfolio solutions and whether it's a good fit for your organization. So hopefully this is very educational. We have a booth outside today if you want to learn more about ExtraHop or a follow-up conversation about XDR. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Ladies and gents, can we please give a big round of applause for Mr. Daniel?